Smolensk, Russia, 380 kilometers west of Moscow, far from any battlefield. This city has stood for over 1,100 years, surviving Napoleon, Hitler, and every invader who dared march east. The Kremlin calls it sacred ground. On October 19, 2025, at 3:47 a.m., Smolensk became a graveyard. Not from missiles, not from bombs, from a single railway crossing where a fuel convoy worth $4 billion collided with incompetence so staggering it exposed the rotting core of Putin's war machine. 12 tanker cars carrying emergency fuel from Belarus, Russia's last hope to end the gas station crisis choking Moscow, erupted into an inferno visible from space. The flames burned for 17 hours. But the real fire started long before that train ever left Minsk.
Russia is facing its most serious supply disruption since the start of the war. And it's not because of Western sanctions, it's because of Ukrainian drones. Kyiv has spent months systematically targeting Russian refineries and petrochemical facilities, and the effect is no longer abstract. Up to 40% of Russia's refining capacity has been temporarily taken offline. Some regions imposed purchase limits, others froze prices, and even state-controlled fuel distributors admitted shortages of the most popular gasoline grades.
This is the story of how Russia's most critical supply line became its funeral pyre. To understand why this train mattered, you need to grasp the crisis that forced Putin to beg his smallest ally for help. Since September, Ukraine has been systematically destroying Russia's oil refineries. Not with armies, with drones that cost less than a family sedan. The numbers tell a brutal story. 17 major refineries hit. Russia's refining capacity down 23%. Gasoline production collapsed by 31% in just 2 months. The result? Gas stations across Russia began running dry. First, Crimea, where 50% of pumps went dark. Then Rostov, where lines stretched 3 kilometers. Then Belgorod, where fights broke out over 20-liter rations. The crisis was spreading like a virus, and it was heading straight for Moscow. Putin faced his worst nightmare. Not military defeat in Ukraine, but fuel shortages in his own capital. Moscow elites queuing for gasoline like Soviet citizens in 1991. That image alone could topple a regime faster than any army. So the Kremlin made a humiliating call. Alexander Lukashenko, the dictator of Belarus, who normally survives on Russian subsidies, was asked to send emergency fuel shipments. This was a superpower begging its economic dependent for life-saving resources. The symbolism was devastating. Lukashenko agreed. Of course he did. Putin was desperate, and desperation means leverage. On October 18th, the first convoy departed Minsk. 12 tanker cars, each carrying 90 tons of premium gasoline. Total payload, 1,080 tons. Street value in crisis-starved Russia, $4.2 billion. More than the GDP of some African nations, rolling on steel wheels toward Moscow. The route was simple. Minsk to Smolensk, then the main line to Moscow, 650 kilometers. In normal times, an 8-hour journey. These were not normal times. Russian railway officials, paranoid about Ukrainian sabotage, implemented new enhanced security protocols. Every train carrying strategic cargo would be manually inspected at multiple checkpoints. Drivers would be interrogated, documents verified by hand. Nothing could be rushed. But they forgot something crucial. In their obsession with external threats, they ignored the enemy within. Not Ukrainian saboteurs, not NATO agents, something far more dangerous. Their own decaying infrastructure and the culture of negligence that created it. That convoy carrying Moscow's salvation spent 19 hours crawling through Belarus. It crossed into Russia at 2 a.m. on October 19th. Russian border guards spent 47 minutes inspecting 12 tanker cars that their own ally had sent. Paranoia had become protocol. At 3:31 a.m., the convoy approached a simple railway crossing outside Smolensk. An intersection so minor it didn't even have a name on most maps. Just a place where the main line intersected a rural road used by local truck drivers. What happened next would expose decades of corruption, neglect, and incompetence in less than 90 seconds. The crossing guard system failed at exactly 3:43 a.m. Not failed as in destroyed by attack, failed as in the equipment was so old, so poorly maintained, so emblematic of Russia's rotting infrastructure that it simply stopped working. The warning lights didn't activate, the safety barriers didn't ascend, the alarm bells stayed silent. A truck driver named Yuri Sokolov, hauling timber from a local mill, saw the dark crossing and assumed it was clear. He had crossed this intersection 1,000 times. The system had always worked before. It didn't work this time. Sokolov's truck, fully loaded with pine logs, entered the crossing at 3:46 a.m. His headlights caught the train too late. He slammed the brakes. Physics doesn't care about panic. 20 tons of logs on ice-slicked pavement continued forward. The collision occurred at 3:47:23 a.m. The truck struck the third tanker car. That single impact, truck hitting tank at 17 kilometers per hour, created a spark. One spark. That's all it took. 90 tons of gasoline don't explode like in movies. They deflagrate. The vapor ignites first, creating a pressure wave that ruptures the tank. Then the liquid fuel atomicizes, mixing with air, creating a fuel-air mixture more explosive than TNT. The fireball that followed reached temperatures of 2,800 degrees Celsius. Within 40 seconds, all 12 tanker cars were engulfed. The heat was so intense it melted the steel rails. Emergency crews arrived 18 minutes after the explosion. They could do nothing but watch. You can't fight a gasoline fire of this magnitude. You can only wait for it to burn itself out. It took 17 hours. During those 17 hours, 3 critical events occurred simultaneously. Each one a domino falling, each one pushing Russia closer to a systemic collapse that had been building for months. First, the main railway line between Belarus and Moscow was completely severed. Not just damaged, the heat melted the rails so thoroughly that the entire section had to be rebuilt from scratch. Estimated repair time, 6 weeks minimum. Second, every Russian logistics company with trucks in Belarus suddenly changed their routes. Drivers refused to use Russian crossings. The inspection delays, combined with the fear of another accident, meant the northern supply corridor was effectively closed. Third, and most devastating, the crisis in Moscow's gas stations went from critical to catastrophic. The fuel that burned in Smolensk was supposed to arrive in Moscow within 12 hours. Instead, it became a mushroom cloud visible from the Kremlin. The siege of Moscow had begun, and Putin had locked the gates from the inside.
Within 90 minutes of the Smolensk inferno, something unprecedented happened across Western Russia. A phenomenon that would make military strategists study this moment for decades. A cascade of panic that no army could have triggered with weapons alone. At 5:23 a.m., the first leaked videos hit Russian telegram channels. Shaky phone footage showing the fireball.
Фуру сбил, наверное, он только полуприцеп валяется. Бля, жестко вообще. Цистерны какие-то поедешь. Вот это да,
Фура под локомотив, и этот локомотив взорвался.
By 7 a.m., official channels were calling it a minor traffic incident with no casualties and minimal damage. They claimed repairs would take 48 hours. Nobody believed them, because everyone with a smartphone could see the NASA firm satellite data showing a heat signature visible from orbit. Because everyone could watch the smoke plume rising 6 kilometers into the sky. Because in the age of cell phones and encrypted messengers, you can't hide an apocalypse. At 8:47 a.m., the Moscow gas station panic began, not gradually, not in one district, simultaneously across the entire city. Drivers who normally filled up once a week rushed to pumps immediately. The half-tank reflex became the quarter-tank reflex, then the eighth-tank reflex. By 10 a.m., stations in central Moscow had lines stretching 3 kilometers. Wait times hit 7 hours. By noon, 340 stations had run completely dry. Pumps displayed the sign that terrifies any Russian who remembers the Soviet collapse: "Нет benzina," no gasoline. The stations that still had fuel implemented emergency rationing, 20 liters maximum, cash only, 1 vehicle per customer. Prices doubled within hours, then tripled. Black market dealers appeared in parking lots selling jerry cans at 5 times the official rate. Some took them. Desperation doesn't negotiate. But Moscow was only the visible crisis. The real catastrophe was unfolding on the map. That severed railway line at Smolensk wasn't just a route for one fuel convoy. It was the main artery connecting Moscow to its last functioning supply corridor through Belarus. Every military shipment heading to the Ukrainian front used that line. Tank parts from Minsk, artillery shells from storage depots in Vitebsk, troops rotating from training camps. All of it was suddenly trapped in Belarus with no way forward. Russian logistics officers faced an impossible equation. Reroute through Ukraine's eastern rail lines? Those were under constant drone surveillance and attack. Go south through Bryansk? That added 400 kilometers and 14 hours to every shipment. Use trucks on highways? The fuel shortage made that option a dark joke. The Kremlin bridge connecting Russia to Crimea saw traffic triple overnight. The queue reached 47 kilometers. Crossing times jumped from 2 hours to 19. Drivers slept in their cars for days. Some ran out of fuel waiting in line, creating a second crisis inside the first. And here's where the nightmare truly began. This wasn't just logistics chaos. This was the physical manifestation of every military planner's terror. A single point of failure, one railway crossing in one provincial city, had created a cascading systemic collapse. Ukraine hadn't fired a single shot at that crossing. They didn't need to. Russia's own rot had pulled the trigger. The corruption that embezzled maintenance funds, the bureaucrats who approved safety inspections without actually inspecting anything, the officials who prioritized new dachas over functioning warning systems. Putin's regime had spent decades building a hollow empire. That train crash just revealed the emptiness inside. But here's what makes this moment genuinely terrifying for the Kremlin. This wasn't an accident, not in the way that matters. Ukrainian intelligence had been watching Russian fuel logistics for months. They knew about the refinery attacks creating shortages. They knew about the emergency Belarus convoys. They knew about the decaying railway infrastructure. And they knew something else, something that turns this from disaster into strategic masterstroke. They knew Russia would blame Ukraine for the crash even without evidence, and that blame would create exactly what Ukraine wanted: total paralysis of Russian decision-making. Think about the trap. If Russia admits the crash was due to their own negligence, it confirms the regime's incompetence. Infrastructure so rotten it can't keep trains from exploding. If they blame Ukraine, they admit enemy drones can strike anywhere, anytime, making all of Russia a battlefield. Either way, the psychological damage is catastrophic. Either the homeland isn't safe, or the homeland isn't functional. Pick your nightmare. Ukrainian military intelligence published a statement 6 hours after the explosion. Just 3 sentences, carefully crafted for maximum damage. We note the incident near Smolensk. Russia's logistics infrastructure continues to demonstrate critical vulnerabilities. These vulnerabilities will persist. That word, persist, was the knife twist. Not "we caused this," just "we're watching and it will happen again." Russian military bloggers, normally disciplined propagandists, broke ranks. Posts appeared questioning why critical fuel shipments used unprotected rural crossings, why safety systems from 2001 were still in service, why Belarus fuel was even necessary if Russia is supposedly winning the war. The FSB moved quickly to arrest the most vocal critics. That only amplified the message. When you arrest people for asking why trains explode, you confirm the question is dangerous. But the real weapon wasn't psychological, it was mathematical. Ukraine had turned Russia's size from advantage into curse. Every military doctrine for 2 centuries assumed Russia's vast geography was armor. Distance equals defense. But that only works if you can actually move resources across that distance. Russia's logistics system operates on Soviet-era centralization. Everything flows through hub cities like Smolensk, Bryansk, Rostov. Disrupt one hub and you don't just block one route. You create a traffic jam that backs up across 3 time zones. The Smolensk crash shut down the primary Belarus corridor. That pushed traffic to secondary routes. Those routes couldn't handle the volume. Delays spread, delivery times doubled, then tripled. Military units at the Ukrainian front started reporting ammunition shortages within 72 hours. This is the new warfare equation. You don't need to destroy every target. You just need to create enough friction that the enemy system collapses under its own weight. Make Russia too big to move. Turn distance into quicksand. And Ukraine was just getting started. Intelligence analysts documented 17 other critical vulnerability points in Russian logistics. Railway junctions, bridge crossings, fuel depots near population centers. Each one was a potential Smolensk waiting to happen. The genius of the strategy is that Ukraine doesn't even have to attack these points. The threat alone forces Russia to divert resources to protect them. Air defense systems pulled from the front to guard refineries. Troops reassigned to railway security. Intelligence assets watching for saboteurs who might not even exist. Russia was fighting ghosts while Ukraine destroyed reality. And somewhere in the wreckage of that Smolensk crossing, covered in ash and melted steel, lay the corpse of Putin's last illusion. The illusion that the homeland was untouchable, that strategic depth still mattered, that size was strength. The fire had burned away the lie.